Hello, hello. Could you please introduce yourself for our students?
Yes, my name is Andrew McLeod. I'm Head of Executive Search and Resourcing here at Hutcheon Mearns Limited. We're a a boutique professional services firm based in Aberdeen, founded in 2014. So we've been going for, what year is this? Almost 10 years now. And really happy to be here to meet with you both today.
Thank you very much. Can you tell me about your decision to attend University of Aberdeen and what factors influenced your choice?
So there was several main factors. I'm from Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
It was very easy, and I guess when you leave school, you don't always know what you want to do with yourself and where you want to go. So it was almost the default choice. Beyond that, I guess I had a lot of family relationship with the university.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother, Constance Fraser at the time, was a law lecturer there.
Mm-hmm.
My father, Dad at McLeod, did his MBA there. My older brother David, he did his management studies degree there. So it was a very logical and easy choice for me to follow in the footsteps. Also the university, just based on the history, the heritage, and the reputation that you got from gaining a qualification there, made it a pretty compelling choice. Also, I'm a bit of a home bird. I like my home comforts. I had my 60-inch TV and my lazy boy chair, so
Absolutely.
I didn't really want to give them up for student accommodation, so it was an obvious choice for me.
Yes. What were some of your favorite courses during your study at University of Aberdeen?
So I did management studies with entrepreneurship. The elements that I liked within that probably were centered more around team leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of entrepreneurial flair or trait, are they born or are they bred? I quite like that. I did quite enjoy some of the HR elements of that course, as well as some of the sort of more technical elements, such as a broad brush knowledge of accounting and finance,
Mm-hmm.
economics, etc. So I would say in whole, I enjoyed most of the modules.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's very interesting. Were there any particular challenges or obstacles that you faced during your time at university as a student?
Yeah, I think there are lots of obstacles, or challenges, should I say, and it's not necessarily around the coursework. I think it's more around the application of effort and the maturity of the individual. People mature at different rates. I'm going to be self-critical here and say I was pretty immature when I left school, and having the mentality to shift it to, well, hold on, there's no one hand holding here, you've got to put the effort in yourself, you've got to time commit. That was a challenge. How I cope with that, the university might shudder at this, but I used to see it was all about qualifying for the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
So first and second year, just get through it.
Yes,
If I have to scrape it, scrape it. But then when it got to the serious years of the qualification, really knuckle down, put the effort in, focus on what I wanted to achieve. And I guess by that point, I started to have more of a feeling about what I would want to do post-university, which made those sort of challenges, although they still remained, easier to overcome.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Did you engage in any student organizations or clubs?
So I played for the university football team for a couple of years, and although they weren't official societies, there were kind of splinter cell groups, people in common interests. We'd go, either we would play football ourselves or we'd go and chat about various things. So, yes, I did.
Okay, that's very good. Are there any lifelong friendships or connections that you made during your time at university?
Lots of connections, and yes, some lifelong friends since that point. I think University of Aberdeen, and one of its great strengths is the sort of multicultural diversity of the university. Meeting people from different socio-economic backgrounds, from different cultural beliefs. It was a great way to meet new people, and I've met people that prior to the university years I wouldn't think I'd have anything in common with them, and now some of them are really close friends, not just personally but also in business. As we all get to that sort of year where we're starting to achieve more in our careers and do more with our careers. So yeah, absolutely.
That's great. What were your career aspirations while attending University of Aberdeen and upon finishing it, and how did they change?
So being brutally honest, I had none to begin with. It was a case of you go to school, you go to university, I'll worry about that at the end. So I probably didn't start taking the career aspect seriously until probably third or fourth year of my qualification. That's when I started to have more of an interest in finance and more an interest in business in general. At that time, I was quite fortunate that my father, Derek McLeod, was a co-owner of an oil tool service company that was private equity backed by Lime Rock, and I quite liked the intricacies of seeing that grow from an R&D play, you know, an oil tool that was going to disrupt the market, as they all claim to do, taking in that finance, watching that business grow. So I was really quite intrigued with that. So when it came to fourth year and had to do my dissertation, I wrote that on SME funding, third-party funding within an SME environment. I used my father's sort of black book to meet some of the main people around Aberdeen, the likes of Steve Carter at Energy Ventures, Jock Gardner, who was at Aberdeen Asset Management, and then Maven, and Mike Hill, who was at High Tech Vision at the time. And each of them sort of gave me more clarity around that lending and funding, which made me start thinking, you know, I really like the idea of moving into that sort of market post-graduation. Now, once I graduated, you know, you find yourself out in the free world, you're like, what do I do with this? Because you've kind of been in student/party mode for 4 years and life comes at you quick. And again, I was quite fortunate. My father extended an olive branch to go and work in his organisation, where I spent 2 years working across various departments before settling in finance. And then ultimately I made the decision to join Ernst & Young, or EY, in, I guess, an accounting graduate role.
That's very interesting. What are some key factors that help you to keep you motivated during your time at university with your studies?
So I think to keep motivated, having a strategy and having a vague outline of a plan. You know, I had an inkling of what I wanted to do. I had and have like a beholden belief in myself that, you know, I will achieve, but it's making sure that the output matches the intent. So having a strategy, focusing on the bigger picture. When, you know, one of my pals or whatever says, do you want to come for beers, and you know you've got something to submit, making the sacrifices. So I think the key thing is, I'm not saying you have to know exactly where your final destination is, but have an idea of where you want to be, and that's self-motivating itself. When you picture it every day, you know, the old cliche of, you know, aim for the stars and all that, but, you know, aim as high as you can, and that helps drag you up and keeps your motivation up.
That's very good. Can you please describe me your key responsibilities at your current role as well as your previous roles?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with my previous role because it's probably easier to segue into my current role. So with EY, I joined the firm in 2009, initially in audit, so working across quite a diverse client portfolio base, some large multinationals, oil and gas upstream, service companies, a lot of SME businesses, which gave me a great understanding of, I guess, how businesses work and how finance plays a role in those organisations, as well as honing my attention to detail, my sort of arithmetic and making sure that everything matched and balanced, as well as building my own sort of personal confidence, interacting with, I guess, individuals of varying levels of seniority, from, you know, junior finance positions right up to, you know, CFO, sometimes CEO positions when discussing important matters. I then transitioned into what we call transaction services, which was a financial due diligence position, which was looking at or supporting companies either looking to sell or to buy. So going in, creating vendor due diligence reports, red flag reports, much more deals focused. At that time, I moved into that department around about the back end of 2015 into 16. We had the oil and gas downturn, unfortunately, in Aberdeen in 14, which meant that I spent a lot of time travelling. Now that was the good part of the role. for me as an individual, because I got to go and travel the UK, work on some pretty important deals, it became a bit of a logistical nightmare with a wife and a young son at that time at home, where I then had to start thinking about, is this right? Do I want to be raising my children via FaceTime? I'm away a lot of the time, and I kind of took that decision to contemplate what I wanted to do, discuss with my peers and colleagues who either recently left the firm or were looking to also leave the firm, and the name that kept coming up, who you should speak to on the recruitment side, was Hutcheon Mearns. So I reached out to Hutcheon Mearns, had an initial sort of consultation with them, discussed around my career ambitions, and that was a lot centred around, at that time I thought, financial controller position, liked to be in an SME, quite liked the culture and the atmosphere, harking back to my father's business around the sort of collegiate mentality of we're in it together, it's a sum of all parts, if you need to go and get milk from the shop for the engineering team, we'll keep them fed and watered because they'll come up with great ideas, and the business will do better. So that sort of in it together mentality. And I guess that probably resonated with the team here at Hutcheon Mearns, who at that point were thinking out of the box of trying to hire someone into the recruitment team who'd actually lived a life as an accountant. So someone that was coming from a position of knowledge, that understood cultural environments, that understood the businesses, understood people, so fundamentally had a network, understood the candidate base, what are people looking for? I was one of them, so that would be really quite obvious. And then the left field offer came, do you want to join this growing organisation in this role? Now, I'm sure they won't mind me saying this, but my initial reaction was absolutely not. I spent 13 years being a finance professional across my father's business and practice, and the idea of moving into a recruitment role wasn't the most desirable. And to be fair, that was primarily based on previous experiences I'd had with other recruitment firms as a candidate. That being said, I took a bit of a step back and thought, do you know what, that's so left field. It's quite exciting. And I did a little bit of diligence in terms of looking in the market, who was doing what, who the competitors are, what was the landscape. And there was no one that really stood out that had, as I said, lived the life. And not being arrogant or egotistical about that, but I thought, do you know what, there's an opening there that I could bring something refreshing, a bit more insight, a bit more relevance to the industry. Took counsel from my father and said to, asked the question, well, what do you think? Expecting the answer to be like, don't be ridiculous. But his response was, it's the worst that can happen. Well, it might not work out. And I'd have to go back. Could you go back? Yes. I could probably go to any of the brands at that point because everybody was short for people. Why don't you give it a go? Give it 6 months. So give it 6 months, and it was incredibly successful. The market took to it really quickly. Going into client meetings, they really liked the fact that I'd gone through the big four, probably shouldn't say sweatshop, but the machine, and there's a lot of shared camaraderie. We've been through our qualifications, the blood, sweat, the tears, the pain, the long hours, the sacrifices that brought results really quickly, quicker than I ever anticipated or expected. The individual that then recruited me into the business at that time to work alongside left the organisation in, what was that, end of 2018, so less than 6 months after I joined. And then very quickly I was then thrust in a position of leadership within the recruitment or resourcing space, which was fine. I was ready to accept that challenge, and therefore it's been very successful since then. So to answer your question, what do I do today? I have oversight responsibility for the recruitment division of Hutcheon Mearns, which sits under our finance people solutions offering. What does that mean? I have a team of 6 or 7 people that look after full suite financial recruitment. That's from assistant accountant positions up to CFO. That's across both industry and practice. We have an office now our new main office here in Queen's Road in Aberdeen. We have an office at Water's Edge in Dundee, and we have a new office currently in Rutland Square in Edinburgh. So we've grown the team quite significantly in that time. Day to day, I look at our executive search service line. So that's focusing on C-suite retained finance positions. So that's the likes of Chief Financial Officer. Now we will look at other positions that have a finance edge to it. So that can be Chief Operating Officer, Chief Commercial Officer, Corporate Development, Chief Strategy Officer, etc. But they tend to be boardroom level positions. It's what I focus on the day to day in terms of operational output. But on that, I look at budgeting, reporting, structures, etc. And as part of the board team here at Hutcheon Mearns, I'm also heavily involved in strategic initiatives and how we want to grow this business.
This is really amazing, thank you. How would you say your mindset and way of working have changed since attending the University of Aberdeen?
My mindset is definitely sharpened. What I learned massively, more so with my time with EY, is that you do get outside what you put in. If you work hard, you're usually rewarded. Not always, right? Not always, but the vast majority is if you stand up, you show up for yourself, then good things typically do happen. I think what EY instilled in me, which I still use today, although maybe not as much, is really strong work ethic. I'll put the hours in, I'll do what needs to be done, I'll take that 7 a.m. call, I'll go to that event that runs to 2 in the morning, and I'll do that consecutive days, 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Whatever it takes, I'm prepared to do it because I know that it's only going to benefit me. No one's going to say, oh, you shouldn't have turned up to that, or shouldn't have done that. They're like, thank you for coming, thank you for coming. So I think that what EY taught me as well is personal integrity. And moving into the recruitment space, because there's so few people. There are few people that do it, full stop. There are a few people that do it well, even fewer that do it well. And it comes down to your own personal integrity and your own reputation. You want people to have a good experience. You want people to think well of you. You want people to think that you're achieving, that you are somebody that can support them in their own goals and aspirations. So I think, how did that change? Probably more reflective. University was very much just, qualify for the knockout stages, win the tournament, get the award, move on, we'll worry about it later. We're now, we're building something of value here. I don't just mean monetary value, but I mean in terms of the level of jobs we're bringing to the market, supporting our clients with filling positions ourselves within our own organisation across Scotland. There's an important role that we're playing in the economy here, and I wouldn't have thought about any of that at uni. It was very much, how many, so maybe ad-libbing here slightly, but you used to have to do tutorials, right?
Yes.
And I very quickly learned that you're allowed to miss 2 of them without explanation. So they were my wild cards. I call them wild cards. So that means if I had a really heavy Wednesday night in the student union or whatnot, I'm banking a wild card tomorrow. It's fine. So that sort of attitude was quickly very much browbeaten out of me when I moved into practice, because you've got to show up for your colleagues. You're in it together. They're long hours, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks sometimes, even more so in diligence. And so I think, how have I changed? Personal integrity is a big thing. Work ethic's a huge thing. Commitment to myself, but also to my colleagues. The old adage of you're only as strong as your weakest link. We're in it together, and I think I'm a lot less selfish than I used to be. It's probably where I'm at.
That's great. Do you have any tips for students who are struggling with stress, maybe because of exams or anything like that?
In terms of struggling with stress, I mean, everyone's wired differently, right? So it is difficult. I mean, someone will say, drink more water, get more sleep. Oh, that's great. What I would say is, make sure you can switch off. and this is coming from someone that can't switch off. Try and cut yourself some space where you're not focused so much so on the task at hand with your studies, because it can be crippling. We've all done it. I've got so much to do, I've got so much to do. I don't start, I procrastinate. I watch, all of a sudden you're watching This Morning or Homes Under the Hammer, and you're like, just start doing something. Do a little. Consistency is everything with your studies. People put a lot of pressure on themselves to sit down and say, I'm going to study from 9 o'clock to lunchtime. 3 hours without a break is unrealistic. Yeah, because you're not going to absorb that. You're going to read over it, you're going to think you've done good work. An hour later, someone asks you a question about the first few pages, I've got a clue. So, a little and often. Make sure you're sharp, 20, 30 minutes, 10, 15 minute break. 30 minutes, 10 minute break. Don't be doing these big swathes of time because you think you're putting work in that will alleviate your stress. It is not. Because when you go and test or challenge yourself, you can't remember, panic. And I was one of those people. So, sharp, in bursts, consistency is key, but give yourself an outlet. Yeah, it's not the be all and end all. University life, yes, qualification is important. It is why you're there, right? But it's the whole life experience, and I think make sure you live it and you enjoy it. Spend time with your friends, harness relationships, but give yourself an outlet, whether that's music, whether that's sport, whether that's begging in the pub. Give yourself something where you have a break from the monotony of study, because it can be grueling.
Thank you very much for this great advice. Did you engage in any internship, part-time jobs, or volunteering experience as a student at University of Aberdeen? No, I didn't. And I'll tell you why. I was lazy. I was very lazy. I was very comfortable in terms of I knew that I had a job at the end because my father would always see me right. Yeah. And I was very lucky in that respect. And probably at that time, just a young lad, I was probably a bit like, I'll be fine. The reality is, and I think this is an important point actually, I'm quite keen to make it, and I'm sure you guys will agree, the access to a degree qualification today, 2024, has never been more accessible to a wider socioeconomic group than ever before. With the rise of open universities, with more and more what we'd call traditional colleges, changing status to universities, there is more access to get a degree qualification. Now, you're always going to have your preeminent organisations. Oxford and Cambridge will always be Oxford and Cambridge. Yeah, St Andrews, Edinburgh University, University of Aberdeen. You'll always have great reputations, so there'll always be good value in your degree. That's fine when you're in this sort of environment. But what students and individuals need to remember now is that you're competing with more people than you've ever competed with before for a limited amount of opportunities. So what I would encourage people to do, and coming back to your point, is do internships, do part-time jobs, join societies, join social clubs, because what I see more and more is real focus on who's the individual, what do you do as a person, what do you like, what have you taken time out, how have you balanced your studies whilst doing more stuff. It's very easy to come in, it's not easy, let me correct. It's easier to come in and just focus on your studies and come out with your degree. But if I'm looking at that as an employer and say, Father, you've come in and you've got your qualification, you've set up the society network off your own back, you're re-engaging with the alumni, you maybe went and did a part-time job somewhere. I mean, it can be anything. It can be bar work. I mean, ideally you want it to be centric to where you want to go in your career. So if you want to be a finance person, get a part-time job working in a purchase ledger position, assistant accounts assistant position or whatnot. When I look at that as a reader, I go, well, they've done a lot more. And actually, look how determined and motivated they were. They went to seek experience that will benefit them later, early.
that gives them tangible experience that they can marry to their degree, but also allows you to develop as a human being, communicate with people. You're not just shut in your bedroom, right? In my day, it was like playing Grand Theft Auto and not talking and then going out, but you're not just locked away, you're being social, you're communicating. So I think it's really important in a world where you've never had more competition in terms of the degree value, separate yourself from the pack. Do as much as you can, but also conscious that you're there to get your qualification. Don't do so many stuff that you flunk and end up with a third or a 2-2, whatever you call it these days, but make sure that you focus on your studies, but try and do little bits and pieces that separate you.
Thank you, it's incredible advice. Another question is, do you have any advice for students who are almost finished with their degrees but unsure what to do next?
Yeah, this is probably quite an important one, is unfortunately, the world makes you grow up quick. Yeah, you have to grow up quick. And some people have to grow up quicker than others, obviously, for various reasons. But in terms of studies and what comes next, you've got to have a strategy. Don't, if you're in this situation, start panicking. No, joke, it'll be fine. But don't get to, graduation ceremony's next week, then I'll worry about what I'm going to do next. Don't be that guy or girl. Don't be me. Have a plan, have a strategy. What do you want to do? Sit down, really think. Really try and formulate a plan. And I'm not saying, and I said this earlier, you don't have to know your ultimate destination, right? But you need to have a sort of a thought and a feeling around, where do I want to be? Where do I see myself in my life? What do I want to be involved in? What type of organisation? What sort of commodity or product does that business do? And then start thinking about how I can make mini steps to get there. Obviously, graduate schemes are great. If you're someone that wants to move into business or finance, each of the big four, many of the top 10 or mid-tier firms will have graduate schemes. Start showing your interest early. Don't wait till the graduation, the application phase opens and then just go, I'll just throw that in. You can do that, but as long as you've done the extracurricular stuff that we talked about earlier, so you stand out from the pack. But start thinking it, for example, if you wanted to be involved with EY, what initiatives do they have? How can I get involved with them? Summer internships. Can I get a summer internship placement during my second year, third year, whatever? Start trying to think about opportunities where you can get in earlier, but have a plan. You need to have a plan. You can't. Some people get lucky. You freewheel it. That'll do, and they end up at something and it works out really well and have a great career. That's fantastic. But I think the vast majority of people need to start strategizing. Where do I want to be? What do I want to do? And then start actively investigating the opportunities to get exposure to that earlier. The earlier the better. The earlier the better. And then when you come to the graduation phase, a year, 2 years down the line, you've got more single-minded focus about how you want to do that. You've potentially already started a relationship stream with an organisation or an individual, and you can start harvesting that to actually, hopefully, get your first job out of studies.
Thank you very much. And the last question for today is, if you could go back in time, would you change anything about your experience at university, or would you give yourself any advice?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I would have changed a few things. Not a slight on the University of Aberdeen, because obviously it's a phenomenal institution. I think as a human being, as an individual, I would have liked to have moved away, lived somewhere else, experienced something different. However, just in case she watches, I did meet my wife when I was at university, and we actually got married at King's College. So if I moved away, I wouldn't have met her, and then the domino effect of children. So I wouldn't have changed anything. No, I think as a personal growth, I'd have quite liked to have either moved overseas, moved somewhere else in the UK, just experienced a different way of living and existing. If I was to stay with university, might have tried halls, It's a bit of a lottery. Did you get Crombie or did you get Hillhead? That's all I always remember. So I would probably, I think the east, so I saw this in one of your other interviews, I did have a quick look, that one of the guys said that because you're from Aberdeen, you just go home. Yeah, when the day's done, you go home and you either still associate with your school friends or you just go home. And I think, yeah, I would have probably been a bit more social, got a bit involved in a bit more stuff if I could have. And probably if I could have interjected a bit more maturity in myself in that sort of first or second year, I think that would help me probably get through that easier when I get to third year.
Thank you very much for the interview.